Would you both please explain your position on the war in Iraq and how this position has been influenced by your own military experience?
I've not had military experience. I've stated that very clearly. My dad had, my brother had, other relatives have. I've got friends serving in the war theater right now. But Dr. Durston has suggested that because I haven't had military experience, therefore my views on this are not as valuable as his. I have every bit of respect for him as someone who served in Vietnam, and I honor his service. Just as I have a respect and honor the service of my friend John McCain or Sam Johnson, member of Congress from Texas, who served our country well and, as a matter of fact, served as a POW, suffering tremendous injuries that he feels to this day. I talk with them about what we ought to be doing in Iraq. John McCain says the position that my opponent takes is exactly the wrong position to take. So we can argue about the circumstances that got us in there, but we ought to listen to the leaders of Al-Qaeda who have said that the #1 front in the war on terror, I call it the war on radical Islam or Islamic fascism, they say the #1 front is Iraq. We ought to listen to what the enemy says. We didn't listen to what they said when they issued a fatwa in the late 1990s, and at that time said they were committed to killing any American anywhere in the world. We didn't really take them seriously when they attempted to attack us in the towers in New York the first time around. It was only after they attacked us on 9/11 that we began to take them seriously. If they say now that is their aim, that is their objective, and they say their first objective is the defeat of the American forces in Iraq, we ought to take them seriously. It just seems to me that if we are concerned about our future of our children and our grandchildren, we ought to know our enemy, and we ought to fight that enemy.
I'm a combat veteran of Vietnam, as many of you know. I got a medal for courage and composure under fire. I have tremendous respect for people who were in that war. I have tremendous respect for people who opposed that war. I have respect for people in serving in the armed forces now and for people who opposed the war in Iraq who never served. I don't have respect for people who never served in the military and particularly never served in combat themselves, but who would send others to war started on false pretenses. The Iraq war was started on absolutely false pretenses. The pretense of weapons of mass destruction, and now the pretense we've just heard that there's any relation whatsoever between the September 11th terrorist attacks and Iraq or Saddam Hussein. That is absolutely false. On top of that, history has already shown that conventional military force is not effective. In fact, not only not effective, it's counterproductive. It breeds terrorism. It doesn't stop terrorism. We knew that before we attacked Iraq. And now we're hearing from experts after experts after experts, most recently the National Intelligence Estimate, that our invasion and military occupation of Iraq is in no way making us safer from terrorism. It is breeding terrorism.
A leaked portion of the National Intelligence Estimate suggested that one analysis would lead to that. The overall report concluded just the opposite of that. Look, we can argue about this. I respect Dr. Durston's opinion. I happen to think he's wrong. Dr. Durston happens to have more faith in the United Nations than the United States government and the United States military. I respect him for that, but I think he's dead wrong on that. We lost Marines in Beirut in the 1980s as a result of the fact that we were there pursuant to the United Nations. What were we trying to do there? We were trying to stop people from killing one another there. The United Nations can be effective occasionally, but in recent times it's been difficult to find when they've been pretty successful. I frankly would have more faith in an elected President of the United States, Democrat or Republican, than I would Kofi Annan.
The question was about Iraq. The question was not about the United Nations. If somebody has a question about the United Nations, I would be happy to explain my position about the United Nations. I don't know if my opponent has seen the entire National Intelligence Report. The portion that was revealed to the public clearly stated that the occupation of Iraq is breeding terrorism. There was a study in Foreign Policy magazine a couple of months ago. 87% of the experts said that the invasion occupation of Iraq is breeding terrorism. Retired General William Odom said, who benefited from the U.S. invasion of Iraq? Al-Qaeda and Iran, and many of us would add, and Halliburton. That war was started on false pretenses. We need to withdraw.